Hello and welcome to Firstpost Spotlight, where we bring you stories that matter to you from all across the world. From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, we shed light on issues that shape our world. I'm Alison Lagrange, live from Durban, South Africa. Let's begin with the top headlines. Turkey claims Russia is willing to freeze the conflict with Ukraine along the current front lines if Kiev seizes all of its eastern Donbas region. Now, this comes weeks after the US President Donald Trump hosted Russian President Putin in Alaska. The Israeli military declares Gaza City a dangerous combat zone as it prepares to take over the enclave's largest city after almost 2 years of war, despite the increasing international opposition. South Korea says North Korea's economy grew 3.7% in 2024, the fastest in 8 years, backed by expanded economic ties with Russia amid the war in Ukraine. Germany's unemployment tops 3 million in August, the highest in over a decade, as Europe's top economy continues to struggle due to weakening manufacturing sector. And Vietnam says it will release nearly 14,000 prisoners, including foreigners, ahead of the country's National Day celebrations. The detainees about to be released are citizens of China, South Korea, the United States, and Australia. Hello and welcome. We begin with the big story out of Asia. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has kicked off the high-stakes two-nation tour to Japan and China, just days after US President Donald Trump slapped 50% tariffs on Indian exports. In Tokyo this morning, Prime Minister Modi received a warm welcome at the India-Japan Economic Forum. He pointed to India's upgraded credit rating, telling business leaders the world is not just watching India, but counting on it. Following a bilateral between the two prime ministers, India and Japan shared agreements to enhance cooperation in various fields, such as defense and security, trade and economy, technology and innovation, as well as people-to-people exchanges.
आज हमारी चर्चा प्रोडक्टिव भी थी और पर्पसफुल भी थी। हम दोनों एकमत है कि विश्व की दो बड़ी अर्थव्यवस्थाओं और जीवंत लोकतंत्रों के रूप में हमारी साझेदारी केवल दोनों देशों के लिए ही नहीं, बल्कि वैश्विक शांति और स्थिरता के लिए भी अत्यंत महत्वपूर्ण है। स्ट्रांग डेमोक्रेसीज आर नेचुरल पार्टनर्स in shaping a better world.
The friendship and trust between Japan and India are unwavering, and I would like to advance these kinds of initiatives between us. That is my sincere hope. As I have just mentioned, we have great potential for cooperation between our two countries.
While Japan remains a cornerstone of India's strategic outreach, the real spotlight is on the next stop, China. Prime Minister Modi is set to arrive in China's Tianjin for the Shanghai Cooperation Organisation summit, one of the most anticipated diplomatic gatherings of the year. This is Prime Minister Modi's first visit to China in over 7 years, and the highest level visit by the leaders of either nation since the deadly Galwan clash of 2020. This time, the SCO stage will see Prime Minister Modi share the podium with China's President Xi Jinping and Russia's Vladimir Putin. While New Delhi's ties with Beijing have improved in recent months, its ties with Moscow continue to be special, privileged, and strategic in spirit and in action. The timing of the SCO summit is crucial. The summit comes as global markets reel under Trump's trade war, and India, China, and Russia are signaling closer ranks through the SCO. Now, founded in 2001, the SCO has evolved into a powerful counterweight to Western alliances. Its members include India, China, Russia, and several Central Asian nations. Together, the SCO countries account for nearly a quarter of global GDP. Beijing is billing this year's meeting as the biggest since the alliance was born. On the agenda is regional security, energy partnerships, and ways to blunt the impact of Western tariffs. The Global South unity to combat the economic challenges remains a top priority for the world leaders at the SCO. Prime Minister Modi, in a post ahead of his arrival, said India has always played a constructive role within the SCO. Without naming Washington or its unilateral tariffs, Prime Minister Modi said New Delhi will continue to work with member nations to tackle quote-unquote shared challenges. India has already condemned Trump's tariff hike as unfair and unjustified. Exporters, meanwhile, are aggressively moving to diversify markets, looking to Russia, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. And so, as Prime Minister Modi steps into this crucial summit in Tianjin, all eyes are on the SCO to see whether this grouping can offer a real counter to America's trade offensive. And shifting focus to the Philippines and China, the two nations continue to be at loggerheads. In the latest, the Philippine Coast Guard has called out China over what it calls expansionism and bullying in the South China Sea region. The Philippine Coast Guard spokesperson, J. Tariella, took to X to criticize China. In a long post, he highlighted the threat that Manila faces from Beijing. He also raised the alleged bullying by Chinese forces. The statement came against the backdrop of a report by a U.S. think tank on Vietnam. The report suggested that Hanoi has significantly expanded island-building work in the Spratly Islands. Vietnam has reportedly started dredging and landfill work at the disputed Spratly Islands, and Vietnam claims 21 rocks and low tide elevations in the Spratly Island chain. The construction could turn the entire area claimed by Vietnam into an artificial island. Now, earlier, only 3 features hosted medium-sized artificial islands. According to the reports, the work will likely surpass Beijing's construction in the South China Sea. China has built a large-scale artificial island in the Paracel and Spratly Islands. As of March of 2025, Vietnam had reportedly created about 70% as much artificial land in the Spratlys as China. Xi Jinping-led China claims almost the entire South China Sea. It does not consider claims by Brunei, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Vietnam. It has expressed firm opposition to the Vietnamese activity.
The Nansha Islands are China's inherent territory. China firmly opposes construction activities by relevant countries on illegally occupied islands and reefs, and will take necessary measures to safeguard its territorial sovereignty and maritime rights and interests.
The Philippine Coast Guard has also objected to Vietnam's reclamation activity. However, Filipino official emphasized that Hanoi has not made any new claims. He said that Vietnam has occupied its beaches for decades now, and that it does not violate the 2002 Declaration on the Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea. The declaration reaffirms the peaceful settlement of disputes, raised China's occupation in the disputed waters, and he said that Beijing has occupied Mischief Reef since 1995. The reef is about 240 kilometers away from the Filipino province of Palawan, and he also highlighted illegal Chinese deployment in the Scarborough Shoal since 2012. Now, the Philippine Coast Guard said that instead of Vietnam, the Philippines should be concerned about the alleged bullying of its vessels and fishing boats by China. This, as Manila often accuses Beijing of dangerous maneuvers around its vessels in the South China Sea. On Thursday, the Filipino Navy said that a Chinese tugboat was spotted approaching its warship, the BRP Sierra Madre, stationed near the Second Thomas Shoal. To counter the Chinese tugboat, the Philippines deployed its ships to circle the area. The Philippine Coast Guard said China's actions were a dangerous violation of the country's sovereignty. The statement was made in response to a Filipino official's remarks calling out the Vietnamese construction in the Spratly Islands. The escalating tussle between China and the Philippines has sounded alarm bells across the region. Now, will these two nations resolve their conflict, or is it a ticking time bomb that could lead to a dangerous escalation? That remains to be seen. And we shift our focus now to the political earthquake in Thailand. Suspended Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra has been dismissed from office after the country's constitutional court ruled she violated ethical standards in a leaked call with the Cambodian strongman Hun Sen. The 39-year-old leader, Thailand's 31st and only the second woman to hold the Prime Minister's office, was removed by the Thai court earlier today. The 9-judge panel ruled that she had failed to uphold the integrity expected of a Prime Minister.
With the aforementioned reasons, the court rules that the premiership of the defendant, who is the Prime Minister, is ended. According to Section 170, subsection 4 together with Section 160, subsection 5 of the Constitution. Since the day the Constitutional Court had suspended the defendant from office, which is July 1st, 2025.
The case revolved around a June phone call with Hun Sen, Cambodia's longtime leader and father of its current Prime Minister. During the conversation, she addressed him as uncle and referred to her own military commander as an opponent. Her remarks set off a furious backlash at home, where the army remains a political powerhouse. Back in June, the now dismissed Prime Minister stood before cameras flanked by top army generals to apologize. She had admitted the call should never have been leaked, but insisted she was only trying to bring peace between Thailand and Cambodia, the two neighbors at conflict due to a border dispute.
All things considered, a conversation like this should never have been leaked in the first place. This person is at the level of a national leader. He was a former prime minister since he was 32, and is also the father of the current prime minister.
The apology wasn't enough. Her main coalition partner, Bumjai Thai, walked out, taking 69 parliamentary seats and nearly collapsing her government. Senators petitioned the court to remove her, and on the 1st of July she was formally suspended. As the case dragged on, the border row with Cambodia exploded into the worst fighting in decades. In July, more than 40 people were killed, 300,000 were forced to flee their homes. For critics, that was the final proof that she had failed to defend Thailand's interests. But earlier today, the judges of the Thai Constitutional Court said while Shinawatra's actions were not entirely appropriate, they were still aimed at maintaining peace and people's well-being. Nonetheless, they found her words breaching the constitutional requirement of evident integrity. Paetongtarn is the 6th Prime Minister from the Shinawatra clan's political movement to be ousted by courts or coups. This includes her father, Thaksin Shinawatra, toppled by the military in 2006, and her aunt, Yingluck, who was ousted in a 2014 coup. And with that, the big old question of the Thai politics has come to haunt its democratic polity once again. Will the military step in again at this moment of political turmoil? Thailand has seen more than a dozen coups since 1932, and when politicians wobbled, largely it was the generals who took over. So what's next for Thailand? A snap election, a backroom deal, or boots back on the capital's streets? For now, Paetongtarn Shinawatra is out, and the kingdom is bracing for yet another chapter in its never-ending political turmoil. And moving on to Israel's war in Gaza, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu finds himself more isolated as the list of countries condemning the war in Gaza grows longer. In the latest, governments led by Saudi Arabia's Mohammed bin Salman and Italy's Giorgia Meloni have unequivocally rejected the Israeli violence in Gaza. The foreign ministers of Italy and Saudi Arabia held talks in Rome. The two leaders discussed the Israel-Hamas war and the strengthening of ties between Saudi Arabia and Italy. Riyadh and Rome have rejected the displacement of Palestinians from Gaza and called on Israel to uphold the principles of non-transfer and non-expulsion. The joint declaration came after an Israeli military warning stating that an evacuation of Gaza City was inevitable. Israel has announced plans to launch a new offensive in Gaza City. The Israeli forces believe that it is the last bastion of Hamas. Around half of Gaza's population currently lives there. The conflict has already forced most of the 2 million Gazans to flee at least once. The displacement of Palestinians from Gaza to end the war is backed by Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and his ally US President Donald Trump. Now, the Saudi Arabian and Italian governments have also expressed concerns over the humanitarian crisis in the Palestinian enclave, calling for unrestricted access to aid and life-saving supplies for Gazans. According to the World Health Organization, more than 500,000 people in the war-torn enclave are trapped in famine, the one that is man-made and instilled because of a state's policy.
Because of the famine, because there is no food or drink, people have to go find aid. Today, there is no money. Who can buy food or drink? No one has money, so they have to go to Zikim.
However, Netanyahu has denied the existence of famine in Gaza in the past. He downplayed the claims about starvation as a propaganda campaign launched by Hamas.
The main thing that I want to stress is the importance of winning the battle for truth. And that is a battle that we fought even as we speak now. Israel is presented as though we are applying a campaign of starvation in Gaza. What a bold-faced lie. There is no policy of starvation in Gaza, and there is no starvation in Gaza.
The condemnation of Israeli violence by Saudi Arabia and Italy followed a horrifying attack on a Gaza hospital earlier this week. The strikes killed 20 people, including 5 journalists, and received a strong rebuttal from Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni.
We cannot remain silent now, in the face of a reaction that has gone beyond the principle of proportionality, claiming too many innocent victims and even involving Christian communities, which have always been a stabilizing factor in the region. And now it is also definitively jeopardizing the historic prospect of a two-state solution for two people.
Both Saudi Arabia and Italy have called for the immediate release of all Israeli hostages and an end to the war with a time-bound political solution and a just peace. Riyadh and Rome also sought Israel to release all withheld Palestinian clearance revenues. And this refers to the taxes collected by Israeli authorities on behalf of the Palestinian Authority. They are yet to be handed over. Both nations also condemned Israel's unilateral or violent actions in the West Bank that undermine the two-state solution.
We call on Israel to cease its attacks, to end its military occupation of Gaza, to halt the expansion of settlements in the West Bank, to allow full access for humanitarian aid to the Strip, and to build on the proposals made by Arab countries to establish a framework for stability and security.
Even as the political pressure builds up, Israel continues to pound Gaza. According to Gaza's health authorities, Israel's military campaign has killed more than 62,000 Palestinians so far, leaving much of the territory in ruins. While the war between Israel and Hamas rages on, innocent lives continue to pay the price. And that's all we have on the show for today. We will see you again at the same time on Monday. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to Firstpost.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT.